The 2024 running back class was not a great one, but today we're going to talk about the second-year running backs because we are heading into the 2025 season. How do they project? Going through them in order of Underdog ADP from a redraft season-long perspective. We're going to be mainly focused on that, but we'll talk about kind of are we in, are we out? And that would obviously be applicable to Dynasty too, because these are young running backs, young assets, and that kind of thing. Danny, we only have one guy going inside of the top 100 picks in redraft. So we're talking about one dude of this class actually hit from like a meaningful fantasy production standpoint. And it was, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer great Bucky Irving.
Which, again, a lot of people in the dynasty cycle were pointing, oh, maybe this isn't the greatest running back class. And it just goes to show you the 195-pound soaking wet fourth rounder is the one that ended up being the league winner of the bunch. Your Tampa Bay Buccaneer, like you said, Bucky Irving, we have him in the tier of his own as the potential league winner of this group. And as you guys can see, the projection over on Underdog, 1,074.5 rushing yards. Taking the higher or lower on that, it is very curious because when you look at his season as a whole in 2024, it really depends what narrative you want to carry going forward. Is he going to be this year's De'Von Achane, or maybe there's differences in context that we want to point out?
Yeah, so the major context that you can point to, a lot of people are probably wondering, what did it look like point per game wise, volume wise, when Bucky Irving was the full-time starting running back of this team? Because he did not take over the workload really until I would say about after the week 9 game against Kansas City, where he was kind of game scripted out. Rachaad White had a lot of work in that game. But from that point onward, if you take out the Las Vegas Raiders game that he left early in, he averaged 20.47 PPR points per game over the final 7 games of the year. And of course, notoriously, the Buccaneers had a very easy schedule, and Irving just carried a lot of people to really high-end production. He ended up averaging about 4 targets per game. He was getting about 17 rushing attempts per game. Again, if you remove that Las Vegas Raiders game where he left early. So looking at Bucky Irving right now, I guess the question is he what he did at the back half of the season? Is he what he did at the beginning part of the season, which I don't think anybody's probably saying? Or is he somewhere in the middle? Because ultimately, this year's De'Von Achane would require him to probably be exactly who he was those final 7 games.
And I understand why people are getting to that narrative. They see the undersized back. They see, uber efficient as a rookie. We saw De'Von Achane this year take a step up in terms of his overall usage, his receiving usage out of the backfield. If Bucky Irving does take that step up, he will be one of the biggest values on the board. And similar to what we were discussing with Achane last year, Raheem Mostert's going to be involved. He had, 18 rushing touchdowns in De'Von Achane's rookie year. Raheem Mostert's going to be a pest all year. People obviously saying that now. Rachaad White has a third down workload, bigger back between the tackles. Sean Tucker, we see contribute some explosive plays last year. It's fascinating, and obviously we did see Achane's workload skyrocket in year 2. But I will point out the fact that I do have more concerns both with Liam Cohen leaving, as well as, quite simply, I think Rachaad White and Sean Tucker are bigger backfield pests than what an older, ancient Raheem Mostert was last year for De'Von Achane.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it as well, because Bucky Irving last year had 2 games over a 60% snap share, just 2. They were week 18 versus New Orleans, which was a must-win game for Tampa Bay to get into the playoffs, and week 19, which was obviously the first round of the playoffs against the Washington Commanders, when it mattered most, 68% of the snaps, 17 carries. He had 2 targets in that game, but his route participation was a little bit lower. And a common theme of Bucky Irving's season was no matter how good he was, he could not take away the long down and distance, the 2-minute drill stuff, the pass protection work from Rachaad White. And frankly, I don't think he's going to, even this year. Even if he takes a big step from a workload standpoint, I do think it's going to be, relatively speaking, about a 65-ish opportunity percent running back. And like you made reference to, without Liam Cohen there to call up this offense and make it as dominant as it was, and now also without Tristan Wirfs for the first 4 games of the year at the very minimum, we're looking at a running back now who could go and regress from 5.4 yards per carry like he was at last year. Maybe he's still efficient. Maybe he's a 4.6, a 4.7. That's going to affect his bottom line. When you're not a workhorse running back and you're not getting 20 plus, 25 plus opportunities per game, if you just think about who he's going around, it's hard to pass on guys that are workhorse running backs like Josh Jacobs, like Jonathan Taylor, even like a Breece Hall or a Chase Brown or a Kyron Williams potentially. Like, I would argue every single running back I just named has a bigger workload than Bucky Irving does.
Yeah, so it really just depends. Being tethered to this Tampa Bay offense, that natural workload progression, can he get up to that 70% opportunity share area, 75% opportunity share area? Because I can make the argument that even if he had let's just say 40 less opportunities in some of those backs, being tethered to your guys' offense is going to be valuable in its own right. So it really just depends what you value. Ultimately, like you said, week 6 on 19.39 points per game, the games he didn't leave early. If we do get that workload bump on top of some bump in the receiving game, again, not really too involved the receiver last year, I do think he has some opportunity to potentially take that next progression, whether it's more trust on third down opportunities, maybe 3rd down and 8, 3rd down and 7. He takes some of those snaps away from Rachaad White. Maybe we start to see him creep up towards that 4.5, 5 target per game range. Because if he is able to do that, again, we like this offense. He scored 7 of his 8 rushing touchdowns in that week 6 to 18 stretch, which is also a big factor. We look at this as a whole. Okay, he had a good year. He scored a good amount of touchdowns. Once you guys actually trusted him is when the majority of his goal line usage, his touchdown equity actually materialized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like the other thing that people probably need to keep in mind too is that Bucky Irving is undersized. So the Bucs are going to want to limit his workload because they do still like Rachaad White. They do still like what Sean Tucker can bring them in like a 10 to 15% opportunity share range. I don't think that we're going to get a workhorse season out of Bucky Irving. So I would just put that out of your mind immediately. He's not going to do what Devon Achane did this year, which is, and even Devon Achane, 59% opportunity share. So as great of the workload that Devon Achane commanded in his second year, he still wasn't out there for the dirty carries. He still was only out there a decent amount of the snaps. So what Irving's going to need to do is exactly what he did last year. The Bucs are going to need to be a top 5 offense. Offensive line concern week 1 is they're going to be without the best left tackle in football for the first 4 games. And Liam Cohen, who drew up this offense, is no longer there. So for me, we ask ourselves kind of, are we in, are we out? What's the cost here at 22.2 underdog ADP? And also like from a dynasty lens, he's the RB7 or so in dynasty right now. Where are you at with Irving? Have we seen maybe it's hard to say we've seen the best of his career already because it was just 1 season. So, but are you in or are you out at his current price? Would you likely want to tier up if you were in dynasty? Would you likely want to not draft him in redraft?
So I think he's a soft sell in redraft, specifically because some of those workload running backs you mentioned, the Josh Jacobs, the Chase Brown, like I do prefer those guys this year. I have Bucky Irving as my RB10, and you mentioned Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams. I still would take Bucky over those guys. But like I said, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, once those guys are off the board, I'm comfortable picking Bucky Irving on that 2-3 turn. In terms of dynasty, where do I currently have him? That's a good question. Let me take a look. In my running back position, he is currently my RB7. So if you preferred, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, because you're, fully trying to win now, I understand that. I have him 1 spot behind Trevion Henderson, who's my number 6 right now. So I like Bucky Irving. Again, I do think the prospect profile of Henderson attached to a quarterback I love long-term was the ultimate decider between those guys. But like I said, too, if you also view the contending running backs like a Barkley ahead of him, I won't fault you for that either. So, that's the thought on Bucky. One final note I do want to make, a little blind player comparison for you, a guy that has kind of been cited before, undersized running back. I'll give you his stats in year 3 for what ultimately a Bucky Irving ceiling outcome could be for year 2 this year. 236 carries, 1,084 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 68 targets, 49 receptions, 474 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. What running back did I just cite in their 3rd season?
James Cook.
Close. Similar.
3rd season. Swift.
Aaron Jones. If Bucky Irving hits, again, maybe it's not exactly copy word for word of those stats, but I can see it being a similar thing where it's like he's sub 250 carries, but the targets get up to about 68, and maybe he doesn't score 19 touchdowns from scrimmage, but that was a year where Aaron Jones was the RB2 in fantasy.
Yeah, that's a great season if Bucky has a year like that. I have him RB11. I do have him after Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, and Josh Jacobs, who all go, I believe, behind him. Maybe JT goes ahead. I can't remember exact ADP right now, but for the most part, I would say he's like a soft fade for me in redraft. From a dynasty lens, I think he's probably fine because he's represents something that doesn't really exist in the running back landscape, which is like a mid RB1 on the market right now. But I also wouldn't be opposed to taking him plus something and going up and getting Achane, Gibbs, Bijan, somebody like that. So let's talk about the next best running back coming from the 2024 class, who is going all the way down in like the 8th round, 9th round. Tyrone Tracy at 104.4 overall underdog ADP, currently set 3.5 rushing touchdowns, 724 on the ground. The nice thing about Tracy was that he was like a great 0 RB target for everybody last year. And he really gave you, I mean, RB 31 in fantasy points per game. And then when you like kind of look at exactly when he was the starter, those numbers start to look better.
Yeah, we do have weeks 5 on once he took a majority workload comparatively to what we saw early on. In that stretch, 61% of the rush attempts, 53% of the routes, 13.5 points per game, and 7 finishes as a top 24 running back. And somebody might say, well, 13.5 points per game, like that's not needle moving production. It's like, yeah, maybe that's a point you can make if Tyrone Tracy was going in the 6th round after a breakout rookie season. He's going 104th overall right now. And I understand Cam Scadaboo, he could be a pest. I understand that. However, for me, when I'm looking at this, I think Tyrone Tracy flashed enough upside on all 3 downs as a receiver, between the tackles, the efficiency as like on the ground as a rusher, I think was there to the point where he should get the first crack. Yeah, we can point to the fact, well, the Giants offense doesn't project well. Well, I do think with Russell Wilson coming over, it projects better than it did last year. Might not be saying much, but Tyrone Tracy was doing that production last year in that terrible situation. Really, ultimately, the cost point for Tyrone Tracy, the question somebody has to ask yourself is, how much of a pest do you think Cam Scadaboo is going to be? Because for me, when I look at it, I think Tyrone Tracy is much more suited to be a 3-down back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will look at this backfield and think it's a black and white decision. Is this Cam Scadaboo's backfield or is this Tyrone Tracy's backfield? I tend to prefer Tracy, but I don't think it's going to be a black and white decision. I think from a managed league perspective, we'll probably know some weeks are Tracy weeks, some weeks are Scadaboo weeks. Maybe early in the season, it's going to be Tracy. And then maybe as the season goes along, Scadaboo starts to take over. We don't exactly know which running back is better. Because if we knew that, we would probably know exactly which stance we're taking. But Tracy was the worst prospect, but had a nice rookie year. Scadaboo comes in, was a better prospect, but maybe doesn't acclimate right away. So we did an entire video on like sketchy backfields, murky backfields. And we did talk about this backfield being one that is probably like better to take swings on in best ball as opposed to like managed leagues. But even in managed leagues, I mean, like you can get some early season touches in a 0 RB build with Tyrone Tracy in like the 9th, 10th round. And Tracy is the guy I prefer to play through for sure.
If you drafted a Trevion Henderson, you drafted an Omari in Hampton, and you grab, Tyrone Tracy and Brian Robinson Jr. as your RB3 and 4, I think you're feeling comfortable because worst case scenario, if you're worried about the early workload for one of the upside backs you took, whether it was a Henderson, whether it was a Hampton, you could just plug in Tyrone Tracy into your lineup week 1 and feel comfortable that he's probably going to get, 16 to 18 opportunities. So realistically, it just depends on somebody's thoughts on Tyrone Tracy. For me, he was a guy I was higher on in the prospect area going into the draft. I love the fit with the Giants. Obviously, we saw him completely usurp Devin Singletary down the stretch as the main back. However, we did see points of last year where some fumbling issues, sometimes on the goal line, Devin Singletary came in. Like maybe he has a longer leash going into year 2 because he's more acclimated with the coaching staff. But on the flip side, it's like, well, you draft a no-nonsense goal line type of profile with Cam Scadaboo. Maybe they did that because of the fumbling issues. Like, it's truly ambiguous, which is why their costs are literally within like 5 picks of each other right now.
Yeah, and this is going to be something that I would expect to materialize in ADP as the offseason goes along. Yeah. As we get, like, training camp is going to be opening up today for rookies. So Cam Scadaboo is going to be reporting today. Next week, we're going to see the veterans around the NFL go to training camp. We'll probably know by the time we get to like preseason usage and all this kind of stuff, what we should expect to see out of this backfield. And I would say the ADPs will get a little bit further apart at that point. For me, I tend to think that Tracy's is going up and Scadaboo's is going down, which is why I'm drafting more Tracy.
I agree. I think it's going to end up being that Tracy probably finds himself in that mid to late 80s area, and Scadaboo kind of settles in that, mid to late 110s is about where I would guess. Like about a 30 pick discrepancy.
The Jags backfield's a good example of what could happen, where ETN, Tootin were going right next to each other, and then we started getting ETN's going to be the starter reports, and then ETN's price went up.
Like 20 plus picks. So if you guys are wondering about the ADP and you're watching it 2 weeks from now saying, well, how are you talking about Tyrone Tracy 104.4? He goes now 83rd overall. We just kind of gave you the spiel as to why maybe that happened.
Yeah, and if you guys want to get some good CLV closing line value on Tyrone Tracy right now, you can head on over to Underdog, start drafting best ball teams, go take advantage of Judkin's ADP fall, and go take advantage of some other things. And of course, you can do that by hitting the link down below in the pinned comment, promo code FSC to sign up and start drafting. The Puppy 2 is live right now. You could spend $5, get 100,000 if you're able to take it down. And that is a nice little return and a nice sweat for you the entire season. If you guys are new best ball players, that's a good way to get started. So Let's get into like the next tier of guys, which again, this class was not good. The 2024 running back class. Let's be perfectly clear here. We spent a lot more time on the rookies this year at running back than we were spending on kind of these second year guys. And of course,
I love this range, by the way.
I love it too, but the wide receiver video is about to be 3 times as long as this one because the class last year at wide receiver was just way better.
More so at ADP is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Upside handcuffs is basically what we're looking at here because from 130 to about 160 is these next couple of guys where you're kind of hoping that maybe they usurp the starter, maybe they have some utility in best ball, maybe they have a couple of weeks where they're the top waiver ad because the starter goes down or something like that. First guy is Ray Davis, who looked good last year, realistically. Looked like a good running back, and of course, he's tethered to one of the better offenses in football.
Yeah, I mean, last year, obviously, when you combine the whole case, we know James Cook kind of holding out right now, wants to be paid like one of the top running backs in the league. Ray Davis last year, number 20 in yards created per touch, 1.69 yards per route run. Really the appeal for Ray Davis, again, 134th overall ADP. We know that if he gets starting opportunity with the Bills offense, he will crush. And when I'm looking at the profile, the size, the 3-down appeal, a ton of upside, like I said, for a top 5 level Buffalo offense. And we saw James Cook thrive on scoring equity last year. Very much overperformed his expectations, scored, I believe, 7 more touchdowns than expected at 16 last year. For reference, the last 2 years prior, I believe he had 8 total rushing touchdowns. So clear outlier for James Cook, but really it just points to the fact that Buffalo will get in those scoring areas. They'll get inside the 10, they'll get inside the 5, and maybe the usage we saw from Cook last year points to maybe more varied usage trying to keep Josh Allen healthy. If Ray Davis were to be the starting running back on any given week, he would be ranked as a top 10 level running back in our rankings. And we saw last year, for example, 41 opportunities in the 2 games he played 60+% of the snaps. And we saw, for example, in Kentucky, I just mentioned that James Cook thrived off a scoring opportunity. Ray Davis scored 14 touchdowns in the SEC his final year at Kentucky. So when I'm plotting everything out, when I'm talking about just implied value, when I'm in the 12th round, who can completely change the complexion of my fantasy league, Ray Davis is one of the best handcuffed running back profiles we've seen in a while. And we'll be talking about a couple great other ones with Trey Benson and Guerendo in a second.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I think, lower on Davis, the player that you seem to be. I'm definitely in the camp that James Cook is the much better running back. And
I agree with that.
He probably will get his contract here soon. Maybe he won't. Maybe he will. I'm not exactly sure. I think that Ray Davis can do what Devin Singletary used to do when he was the starter for Buffalo a couple years back, when he was like Devin Singletary is always undervalued and he's like a back end RB2 in my weekly running back rankings and that kind of thing. I don't really think he's going to really do a whole lot with a big workload. I think he'll probably just be a volume play for the most part. But a volume, like let's say you got 4 or 5 games of him being a volume play. Well, that's a positive EV pick at 135th overall or whatever, if James Cook misses some time. So to me, the thesis is that James Cook misses a couple of games here and there. That's why you take Ray Davis. I don't tend to think that he'll carve out a standalone role of much.
Well, I mean, the standalone role from a best ball perspective, I agree with you. Like, if James Cook is on the field, he's going to be the starting running back. Like, I'm not saying, oh, yeah, it's going to be a 1A, 1B where Davis is getting 45% of the work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm also just saying in a picking in the 130s, when you have that type of implied upside attached to this offense with already lingering concerns of a holdout, I do think his ADP could very much go out if we hear even more reports. James Cook isn't happy. He's not going to sign. And Ray Davis's ADP come August is in the 115s because of that, or 110s because of that. Like, yeah, I can very much see that.
The most important factors, I think, when it comes to handcuffs and evaluating who's a better handcuff than the other person and whose value is good for relative ADP cost is usually likelihood the starter goes down and what would happen if the starter went down. Like, Davis would probably be a 70% opportunity share guy if the starter went down. And we already have some evidence to say that he would probably do something with that workload. He's not like a complete bum. Like Marshawn Lloyd, we'll talk about in a second. We have no clue what he is. So it's not like we can say convincingly, yes, he's good or yes, he isn't good.
So I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because in those 2 games, I mentioned overall strictly the 41 opportunities in those 2 games, which, by the way, if he gets 41 opportunities in any type of 2-game stretch this year, like, it's going to be a paid off pick in the 12th round anyways. But in those 2 games, 18.2 PPR points, 14.5 PPR points. So you see the pathway where if Cook did miss a 5, 6, 7 game stretch, like, he could very easily be a top 15 running back. And anyone with that type of implied upside is a smash pick in the 130s.
Yeah, I just disagree with the price point. I think he's fine among running backs where he's being priced at RB 43. But I have a hard time clicking Ray Davis when at other positions, Colston Loveland goes 3 picks ahead of him.
I don't think you can compare flex players to onesies though, because
Okay,
obviously,
well, let's say wide receiver wise, Kyle Williams and Hollywood. I think I get more usable weeks out of those players personally.
Kyle Williams goes a lot earlier than the 130s.
He goes 1 pick ahead of him, 133.8.
So he must have dropped. He was in the hundreds literally 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so he goes 133.8. Hollywood Brown 136.
I would take Trey Davis over Hollywood and sleep like a baby.
I would not. I think you're going to get more games out of Hollywood Brown in a vacuum, unless Cook goes down. Obviously.
You might get more wide receiver 4 games, but let me just get the upside of an RB2 plus.
I think on a median range of outcomes, Ray Davis hits your lineup 3 to 5 times. Sure. On a median range of outcomes, I think Hollywood Brown in a 3 wide receiver start hits your lineup 3 to 5 times.
Respectfully, in the 12th round, I'm not focused on median range of outcome.
I am. And in the 12th round, like, you're not getting a whole lot of good options there.
Dude, well, that's what I mean. If we're not getting a lot of good options,
that's why I take quarterbacks and tight ends generally in this area.
Well, that's what I mean. If I'm not getting a lot of good options, give me the guy that, if he does hit, is absolutely consequential, which I believe Ray Davis, if he hits, would be one of the biggest league winners in fantasy.
I think this is probably the number one reason why I'm not taking Ray Davis, is because of the next guy going right after him, who I think is way more.
Get me all these 3 guys, bro. Ray Davis, Trey Benson, and fucking Isaac Guerendo. Are you kidding me? The price point on all these guys, like, picture this, 220 plus pound workhorse profiles. Yeah, I understand they don't have immediate workload appeal, but if I'm getting that at 12th round opportunity cost, give me 3 or 4 relevant games and these guys would smash in them. That's where I'm at with this in best ball, especially. But even in your redraft league, if you have like a Brian Robinson and take on some early workload, take a swing on a Trey Benson, take a swing on a Ray Davis, take a swing on an Isaac Guerendo as your RB4 or 5 on the bench.
Yeah, this is what we talk about from a redraft standpoint all the time. Line your bench with handcuffs, line your bench with upside. Trey Benson represents that for sure. I mean, we both, ironically, had him as like a top 1 or 2 running back in this class. We didn't get to see a whole lot of Trey Benson as a rookie because, James Conner did his thing and was a top 15 running back in fantasy points per game. But the nuts and bolts of Trey Benson is that he was actually quite efficient outside of one game. A lot of people go, look at Trey Benson's efficiency. It was so terrible. Well, it's being weighed down by, I think he had a game where he had like 11 carries for 10 yards or something like that. And then outside of that, I think he was over 5 a carry on the rest of his games that year, last year. And also too, like, Trey Benson, the prospect, was raw, needed some time, has learned probably from James Conner. Oh, and by the way, my comp for him is like Breece Hall light because he's that good of an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, you pointed it out. Obviously, that one game was pretty awful, 11 carries for 10 yards. Even when you include that game in the holistic sample, we're looking at 63 carries for 291, 4.6 yards per carry. I mean, that's not the least efficient we've ever seen. On top of that, like you said, if you isolate that game out, you're talking about 52 carries for 281 yards, which, I mean, 52 for 281, that's easily over 5 a carry. What, like 5.3? 5.4 per carry. So it goes to show you, like, obviously, again, people will microanalyze what's the elusiveness look like, what's the contact pass like. Dude, the guy literally set the fucking PFF elusiveness record. I'm not concerned about his ability to break tackles.
No, neither am I. He's got the size, he's got the speed. Ultimately, the reason you're buying Trey Benson at his cost, which I absolutely am, and that's why I'm not drafting Ray Davis, is because they're basically the same price, is that I think if both James Cook and James Conner went down, Trey Benson would be much higher in my rankings than Ray Davis.
And that's where I'm conflicted, because I think Benson's the better player, but really, how much does an average offense versus an elite offense bridge the gap? Like, that's where I'm
maybe just a little bit higher on the Cardinals. And I think that the workload would probably be better for Benson than it would be for Davis, because I think that you would see Ty Johnson and some of those guys take away receiving work from Ray Davis, where I think Benson would actually have a chance to get 3 down type of workload.
Yeah. Well, it's a close combo regardless. Again, I love these guys. I mean, they're both implied upside plays. They're realistically the perfect RB5 on any type of structure that I'm trying to build, whether it's in best ball, whether it's on my redraft teams. Because like you said, I mean, there's a running back in front of him that has not finished a single season. We even saw last year, the final time that we thought, oh, maybe James Conner will finally finish a season, and he gets hurt in week 17. What if that injury happened in week 14? What if that injury happened in week 11, week 8? Like, we're talking about a completely different narrative bias on Trey Benson's season if that James Conner injury happened earlier on.
Yeah, the other, like what I said earlier too, is how likely is the starter to go down? And with each of these next 2 guys, the starter is much more likely to go down than James Cook is, because James Conner, 1,600 career touches, 30 years old, and has never finished a full season. Isaac Guerendo and Christian McCaffrey, we know what the injury situation is there. So for me, if I had to rank them as players in the NFL so far, I think it's proven that Guerendo's the best based on what
we'll talk about him in a second.
What we've seen in the NFL on the NFL football field, but what I thought of Benson as a prospect, what I think he can do now in year 2, I think he will end up being the best. And I do think that Conner of these 3 running backs is maybe the most likely to go down with injury. Even if the 49ers and Bills offenses might be better, I think Benson would get a better workload.
Yeah, and again, Conner is a factor. Don't get me wrong. There's a reason why we're not drafting Trey Benson round 4, round 5, because Conner does fucking exist, and Conner deserves to go in the top 6 or so rounds in your draft. But we have to factor in the age, we have to factor in the injury history, and we have to factor in the upside of the prospect we saw from Benson.
There's a possibility that Benson could outright win this backfield too. It's not likely. I think Conner probably starts as long as
5% chance maybe.
But it's more likely than Guerendo winning his backfield over McCaffrey, and it's more likely than Ray Davis winning his backfield over Cook.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Regardless, we are both smashing Trey Benson at this cost. What was 139.6 ADP? Like, you could tell me it was 115.6 ADP, and I'd still be taking him at cost. So
not much of a difference between him and Charbonnet, who goes around that range.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Isaac Guerendo, 143.4 ADP. And what isn't to like about Guerendo's profile? Let me just paint the picture, like very, very simple to those of you that are watching right now, even if you didn't even watch this guy play last year. 220 plus pound size, 4.3 level speed, very efficient as a rookie, and tethered to the San Francisco offense. Yes, CMC appears to be healthy, but Jordan Mason is gone, and Guerendo profiles as that main elite handcuff to McCaffrey now. We saw last year in the 4 games that he played, over 50% of the snaps, 17.85 points per game, would have ranked as an RB1 in fantasy, scored 4 rushing touchdowns in those 4 games. And again, I understand, if somebody is all in on Christian McCaffrey, maybe you're not drafting a lot of Isaac Guerendo. But if people are going to go on one hand and be pessimistic about CMC, talk about the Achilles tendonitis, I'm shocked Guerendo is this cheap. That's like a lingering concern for a lot of people. If that's the case, why aren't we hammering up his primary backup? Like Jordan Mason goes in the top 100. Why isn't Guerendo going at least in the top 110, 115 if there's pessimism about McCaffrey's status?
I guess people think that Mason has a bigger standalone role in Minnesota than what Guerendo is going to have as long as CMC is out there. But like you said, if you are anti-McCaffrey, you should be very, very pro Isaac Guerendo. Even if you are pro McCaffrey, you should probably get your swings on Guerendo.
That's what I'm very much in on McCaffrey, but ultimately my general rule of thumb right now is I just want to leave a draft with a 49ers running back. If it's McCaffrey, hey, guess what? You're getting a league winner in the late first round. If you believe that McCaffrey's going to get hurt, you better stock your bags with Guerendo, because if McCaffrey does get hurt, a 220 plus pound running back with that speed with Kyle Shanahan, we saw Elijah Mitchell literally be an RB1 in fantasy, and he didn't have remotely the receiving upside that Guerendo did. Guerendo
is a great pick. I mean, all these handcuffs, you draft them for a specific reason. Again, I haven't actually ended up with a lot of these guys. I thought I would have had more bags of Benson and Guerendo and Davis than I do. Guerendo was my highest rostered right now at 6%. But I think part of it, like I said, is that usually in that territory, I'm taking my quarterbacks and tight ends because that's where a lot of them go. And that's where I'm usually selecting players there. So I'm not usually drafting wide receivers or running backs in that area because I've already drafted a lot of wide receivers and running backs at that point in my underdog drafts. The other kind of upside handcuff in this territory is Jaylen Wright, who with Jaylen Wright, 161 overall ADP. So you're getting him a little bit cheaper than the other guys. Raheem Mostert's gone. It's the Devon Achane show. And similar to what I said about Trey Benson, Jaylen Wright was also really raw. So I don't think it should have shocked a lot of people that he didn't look great as a rookie because he was 20 years old coming out of the draft. And he came from a Mickey Mouse system at Tennessee where no one really knows what they're doing as a prospect. And I expect kind of even potentially Dylan Sampson to look similar as a rookie because it's not a pro style offense that you come from in Tennessee.
Big learning curve.
Ollie Gordon was also added in round 5, and it wouldn't shock me if they're kind of split backups as opposed to Wright, the clear handcuff, clear standalone role, something like that. All I know for sure is that I'm drafting a lot of Devon Achane, and it's not really pushing me towards drafting a lot of Jaylen Wright as a result. But the silver lining is this. Achane was only a 60% opportunity share running back, even last year when he was basically a workhorse. There's maybe enough room for one of these two guys, whether it's Wright or Gordon, I expect it to probably be Wright, to carve out a small standalone role as opposed to just being a handcuff. Let me ask you this. If Achane went down for the year right now, would Jaylen Wright be like a league winner, or would it be kind of more of a split backfield between him and Gordon, do you think?
I definitely think there would be a split. Now, in terms of where I can see Jaylen Wright kind of figuring into, you're going to figure that it's probably going to be more efficient, just based off the archetype of running back, based off the system that he's fitting into in terms of the glove. You could pretty much expect probably at least a 4.5 yard per carry type of running back. Like, again, if Achane was only getting a 59% opportunity share and 63% of the snaps, like, you're not expecting Jaylen Wright to completely absorb that. You're probably looking at it being a closer committee between him and Gordon. I would say probably a 55-45 split in terms of opportunity share. It's tough because I really don't know what to be asking. It feels like a new age Kyle Shanahan backfield question is what it feels like.
Yeah, it is. And that's what we need to be asking ourselves, because I would argue the previous two guys should be going ahead, because I think if Connor goes down, Benson gets a bigger workload. If McCaffrey goes down, Guerendo gets a bigger workload. Maybe even some of these other guys going after, like Lloyd and Corum and stuff, like it's possible that Wright doesn't get quite as big of a workload as those guys even do if their starters.
I'll raise some concern for them. Don't worry.
Anyways, my thought on Wright is this. He's probably going to just be like a change of pace back, at least this year, because he's still very, very young and doesn't have a whole lot of experience. There's not much you can point to say that like this guy's a good player at the NFL level, other than the fact that both of us had him as like a top 3 to 4 running back in the class last year.
Yeah, it's tough to know also how the team feels about him. Maybe we get more of an indication in the preseason, because he's very clearly playing above Ollie Gordon throughout the preseason. Like, there's going to be telltale signs that we'll see throughout August and July for the most part, because I mean they're not in the Hall of Fame game actually, so it would just be August.
Yeah, it'll just be in August. Like,
it's tough.
Yeah, there's not much I want to say about Jaylen Wright, honestly. If we keep hearing this drumbeat, because we've heard it a little bit so far, that he's going to have a role, he's going to be a part of the backfield or something, we'll factor it in more. But as of right now, I tend to think he's just Achane's handcuff. And even as a handcuff, I don't think he's like a league-winning upside handcuff. I think he's probably would be an RB2 in my rankings handcuff.
Where do you have Wright ranked?
I have him like outside of my top 45 running backs.
Overall.
Overall in my
He's
rankings?
156 for me in my 2025.
Let me take a look. I got to look for him, because I don't think I have him where he's going, to be honest. I think I might have him after that. Jaylen Wright is 171 and he goes at 161. Yep. So I'm a little bit lower on him.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But regardless, we can head on to the tier 4 running backs, which we literally have labeled as deeper board running backs. We definitely don't have to spend nearly as much time here, but there are some interesting conversations. The market currently very much prefers Braelon Allen straight up over Isaiah Davis. We see that by the ADP. Braelon Allen viewed as the main handcuff to Breece Hall at 170.6. Isaiah Davis faltering behind about 46 picks cheaper. To me, this definitely is just prospect bias, because if you objectively evaluate their rookie seasons, Isaiah Davis was much better.
He was, dude. He had 6.4 yards per touch and 5.8 yards per carry on his touches last year. He only had 42 opportunities, but Braelon Allen, 3.6 yards a carry, 17th highest EPA per rush is good, and he is only 21 years old, whereas Isaiah Davis is 23 and a half. So, there's a bit of an age difference there. If Breece goes down, I'll ask you the same question. What happens in this backfield? Is it a 50-50? Because it was last year, for what it's worth. Like, when Breece went down, we did not get a clearer number one back here, but we did see Isaiah Davis have 12.2 fantasy points, 15.7 fantasy points during that time where Braelon Allen was essentially the short yardage back. It's a different coaching staff. We don't exactly know what to expect here, but like, I don't know. I tend to think that if Braelon Allen and Isaiah Davis were the two starting running backs, it's a Detroit Lions type of scheme. You'd probably see Davis be very, very Temu version of Jahmyr Gibbs, and Braelon Allen very, very Temu version of David Montgomery.
Yeah, the way I look at it is they would probably split goal line opportunities, and Isaiah Davis would get the third down work. I don't see any world where Braelon Allen is going to get comparatively way more work. Like, maybe Braelon Allen gets a few more carries, but like, what? Let's just say in a scenario Breece Hall went down and they had 30 running back touches in the back, or maybe 30 is not enough. 35 backfield touches to allocate in a week. How would you allocate those touches?
Like almost dead even, to be honest. Almost dead even. And that makes Davis the way better pick at ADP. If you have a jet stack or something, you got Fields, you got Garrett Wilson, you don't have Breece Hall, and you wanted to throw an 18th round scroll the F down on Isaiah Davis, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
13 carries, 5 targets per game type of upside in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think either of these guys, to be completely frank, are getting anywhere near Breece Hall's workload, though. I think there's no shot that Breece is not a 75% opportunity share guy.
I would agree. Draft Breece Hall, but regardless, if you're going to draft a Jets running back that isn't Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis is a much better pick at cost than Braelon Allen. I wasn't really impressed with Braelon Allen. Both I was less impressed as a prospect. I thought, the size narrative. Oh my God, he's so big. He's such a hammer running back. It's like, well, dude, he didn't actually run people over on film. Sorry, if you thought that was the case. But anyways, I'm not going to keep talking shit about Braelon Allen. He's still young.
Yeah. Two guys that I'll just group really quick together because they're not really that relevant to me. Will Shipley, 170.
He's got a hive, bro.
Yeah, I know. He's got a hive, but he only had 3.4 yards per touch, minus 3.5 EPA last year. It was an extremely small sample. He only had 34 opportunities. I think this is why he has a hive because Kenneth Gainwell's gone. Kenneth Gainwell's on Pittsburgh now, which I don't think anybody remembers that he signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers. 97 opportunities, 20%-ish opportunity share is what he vacates. We all know that Saquon Barkley is going to get all the work in Philadelphia.
What if he goes down?
But technically, he's the primary handcuff, Will Shipley.
But is he, though? Because, they have A.J. Dillon. It's like, would A.J. Dillon being the real number 2 actually shock anybody?
No, I don't think so. And I think Shipley is an interesting receiving back, but I think the plan that I think
on a team that doesn't throw the football,
they're just assuming he's the new Gainwell is what's happening.
Which I understand. Also, it's funny you said receiving back. It's like the Eagles aren't going to throw the football a ton anyways, but that'd be funny if the only appeal is you'll catch some passes. If they're throwing the ball 22 times a game, you'll catch some passes. Very, very appealing, right? All jokes aside, though, I understand it because you want access to a good offense. Saquon Barkley's an older running back, injury history. I get the thesis. My issue, though, we've seen the Eagles so many times. When they have an injury, do they just say, hey, you know what? Next man up, we'll put him in? Or do they get aggressive to try to patch that hole?
Yeah, or they would just pick up guys off the scrap heap and throw them into a running back by committee too. I could see them totally doing that.
Dude, what's ruling them out? Let's just say fucking Saquon Barkley got hurt. And in season, they were like, fuck, Barkley's hurt. He's gone for a long period of time. Let's go throw a 6-for-7 swap and get ETN from the Jags. What's stopping them from doing that?
Even Dalvin Cook is a free agent right now. We'll throw him in him, AJ Dillon, and Will Shipley are going to carry the ball for us this year.
If Shipley was the type of talent, for example, if you put Guerendo in that spot, you put Davis in that spot, you put fucking Benson in that spot, okay, we'd be changing our tune because we'd like that. It's just more so the fact that based on his rookie season, based off his prospect profile, Shipley for us was a fringe top 15 to 20 running back in his own class.
Yeah, he was a late day 3 guy, and that's where he got drafted. So I don't really see a whole lot of upside here. People are like, oh, look at the receiving upside. It's okay, well, he just was the whole offense for Clemson, and that's why he got some receiving targets in college. Not a very good prospect. Same goes for Audric Estime. He was very young last year, still just 21 years old, but he's kind of a plotter. He's probably got 2 injuries in front of him that need to take place. If the Broncos get massacred and Harvey and Dobbins go down, maybe you see Audric Estime pop up as an interesting guy. But for now, I'm not going to spend any draft picks on him. The 2 guys that I did want to spend a little bit of time on here are Marshawn Lloyd of the Green Bay Packers, who I kind of briefly made reference to, and Blake Corum of the Los Angeles Rams. With Lloyd, supposedly he's healthy, which has been the biggest problem for him to this point in his career because he had a hamstring pull, an ankle sprain, even appendicitis last year. But he was 5'9", 220 as a prospect. He did get drafted in the 3rd round. He ran a 4.46, 93rd percentile speed score, a fine college profile. I don't think he was a world beater of a prospect, but he wasn't terrible. And Josh Jacobs has 1,840 career touches. And if he went down, Lloyd only has to beat out Emmanuel Wilson, who was not a high investment piece from the team. So my thought process on Ray Davis is, why would I draft Ray Davis at 130 when I could draft basically the same type of projection, only I don't know for sure he's actually good in Marshawn Lloyd? Because both 2 offenses I think are really good.
I completely disagree with that because if I told you right now that Marshawn Lloyd this year gave you 103 carries, 502 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns, how would you describe that year?
I would say if assuming Jacobs stayed healthy, I would say that was a great year. Yeah,
but that's exactly what Emmanuel Wilson did.
Like I said, by the way, at this point in the draft,
you know who I quoted, though? That was Emmanuel Wilson's stat line last year. I'm not even convinced that Marshawn Lloyd's better than Emmanuel Wilson.
I'm not convinced of that either, but I think that the team wants to be convinced of that. And if Lloyd is healthy, which he hasn't been, he can be a functional guy for them.
I just it's the bird in hand versus the 2 in the bush thing. It's you drafted and invested into Marshawn Lloyd to be your RB2. But Emmanuel Wilson was quietly a good RB2. You take his career. So he's been in the league, obviously 2 years now, obviously small school guy, older prospect, he was a fodder prospect profile, but his 2 years in the NFL, 117 total carries, 587 total rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns, about 5 yards per carry.
Okay.
Emmanuel
I mean,
Wilson.
maybe Emmanuel Wilson's a lot better than I think he is.
He's pretty good last year, dude.
He's not bad. I would say Lloyd is the type of guy that if he gets buzz, he's healthy, he looks great, he's going to be the RB2 for us, his price will go up. So why I kind of like him right now is that I think that'll probably happen and you'll get CLV on him.
Yeah. If it's a CLV case, I think that's reasonable. I just think like
he could be a stone zero for what it's worth. Like he could be a stone zero for sure.
I just genuinely look at it like if Jacobs were to go down, like Marshawn Lloyd too profiles more as a third down back. Like, I actually think Emmanuel Wilson's implied upside, given his size, stature, and given the experience last year, would probably get a bigger comparative workload. And in fact, I'm probably convincing myself to take some more scroll the F down Emmanuel Wilson's.
Yeah, I would say that's probably where you should stand on if you're not taking Marshawn Lloyd, because Jacobs is super durable. It's not like he's been injury prone or anything in his career, but you never know with a guy who's had that many touches under his belt. Blake Corum's the last guy that we should probably talk about. He was going really high in ADP last year. If you guys remember, he was like where Charbonnet is right now in ADP. Kyron, another RB1 season, probable extension looming. Corum is kind of Timu Kyron, as we've talked about, where they have the same skill set. If Kyron goes down is really kind of what we need to decipher here. If Kyron Williams went down, what happens in this backfield?
I think neither of them are going to get a Kyron workload. I think it's going to be a straight committee. And I think the space opportunity, I don't want to say a Timu version because we already used that term, but how you guys, before Irving completely took over, were using Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. I can kind of see that being the case here, where Corum, is going to get the no-nonsense carries. He's going to be, the pass protector when they need him to. He's going to do the dirty work. And then your space back is going to be a guy like Jarquez Hunter because he quite simply can just do much more in space at this point.
Yeah, and Hunter goes higher in drafts. So Hunter is presumed to be the number 2 running back, but Corum was the better prospect. So that's the part where I'm like, okay, maybe there's a disconnect here. The market seems pretty sure that it's Hunter who's the number 2 running back, and it could very easily be Corum. He might have just had a tough adjustment to the NFL and all that kind of stuff. So my thought process is at an 18th round cost, I'm okay taking some swings on Corum.
Yeah, and they're both cheap enough where if you're just going to say this year, hey, I am fading Kyron Williams, I don't think he's a great talent, and I think he's going to get hurt or benched at some point. If that's your thesis, and you realistically in the 17th and 18th, you want to take Hunter and Corum, like I don't think that's bad at all.
Flatten them out, maybe take a little bit of each guy kind of thing. That would be my take on it. The thing that keeps sticking in my brain is how sure the market was last year that he would be the handcuff if anything happened to Kyron, and Kyron, of course, doesn't miss.
It's incongruent.
It's incongruent. Like if people were taking him this high last year, like pick 100 or 110 or whatever we were taking him, he should be going like 130 right now, realistically, even with a 4th round running back addition, because he was a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really tough to decipher. Obviously, it's pessimism because we thought there was a chance that Kyron would be replaced last year, which I think that was part of it. They take Corum, oh my God, Kyron uninspiring, efficiency went down. People were connecting the tea leaves and saying, okay, maybe Corum actually just supplants Kyron Williams. Like, I think that was baked into the range of outcomes enough for why people had Corum pushed up that high.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that was the second year running back report. Kind of, are we in? Are we out? What do we think about them from a redraft frame of mind? Primarily season long and best ball, but also a little bit of dynasty mixed in there as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. If you want to start drafting some of these players, get advantage of some of these ADPs, head on over to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You get up to $1,000 in bonus funds. You can start doing some puppy drafts. You can start doing some BBM drafts. Get your share of some big prizes over there. And stay tuned for the second year wide receiver report, which will probably be, I would imagine, double this video in terms of the length that we're talking, because we have a lot more consequential names to talk about. We had one guy in the top 100 in this video. I think we probably have 7 or 8 guys, I would imagine, in the top 100 in the other video. So definitely stay tuned for that. That'll be dropping tomorrow. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.